Patani, and Nathiwat as a Patani, as a whole, like that. So, which is okay, no problem. All right, so allow me to share just short presentation slide. Maybe not just cover all what I said, but at least I want to introduce the book. What is the book all about? The purpose of the book, and then uh, the background of the author. Prof. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulayman. Okay.
Fathee, you are unmute. Unmute. Please unmute. Fathee, you are unmute.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay, is it clear? Clear. I
Clear, clear.
hope is it clear. Okay, so for here today, I'm going to discuss, not just discuss, maybe just present the point or the content inside the book Towards an Islamic Theory of International Relations by Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman. So this book is a work that proposes of course, an alternative way of looking at global affairs, as the brother just one mentioned before. Like right now, we see many crises around the world, and then all of that thing happened because of we only have a really limited international relations theories, mostly constrained with the mainstream from the Western thinker. So here, this book will cover at that part also what is international relation, and then the what do you call this? The uh, maybe like the weakness of the mainstream international relation, and then Prof. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, he will give his alternative view toward these theories. So let's talk about the book a little bit, all about the book. How can I move this slide? Wait. Okay. So in this book, we are going to explore the key themes of the book. Like we will uncover its relevance to the contemporary global challenges, including conflict resolution, diplomacy, international cooperations. And then the insight of this book offered by Prof. Abu Sulaiman not only address pressing issue, but also promote dialogue between diverse culture and ideology. This is really essential in today's world because we cannot just simply say that our culture, our value, our principle is the greatest one, and then we ignore all others cultural, all others principle and value, which will create problem later on. So with this, I think the book will also discuss and then enrich the academic discourse surrounding international relations, encouraging further research and exploration of alternative theories, methodologies within the field of Islamic study, not just international relation, but international relation integrated with the Islamic study, with the not Islamic study, I mean Islamic of knowledge, right? So after we know, like the book, we talk about the alternative way to look at the international relation. Next, let's we start to talk a bit about the author, which is Prof. Dr. Abdul Hamid Ahmad Abu Sulaiman. As we know, he is a prominent Islamic scholar for sure, and then he really well known for his extensive work in the field of Islamic thought, especially like in education, economics sometimes, and then he also really well known in terms of Islamization of knowledge. So this Islamization of knowledge really try to bring like the secular, I mean the mainstream knowledge of today's world to integrate it with the Islamic. So that's why we call it Islamization of knowledge. And then for the book today, we're going to discuss about international relation, specifically under the political science. So next slide. Wait, let me move next slide. Then it will be better for us to know first why he wrote this book. Because if we don't know the purpose of the book, of course we we know the contents, but we not really get the objective why he want to share this thought, why he come up with this idea, with this alternative view of international relations. So the main purpose of this work, of this book, is to create a theory of international relations that is authentically, I emphasize this again, authentically Islamic, meaning that it is built from Islamic value, ethic, and perspective, different from the mainstream one. Because the mainstream one, mostly realist or liberalist perspective, mostly they focus on material gain, focus on self-interest, focus on what else? Power. Mostly is revoke. The center is all around like what they're going to gain, not really talking about the value, not talking about the uh, the ethic, something like that. But he think that the value, ethic, and perspective re- regarding the Islamic value is really important to play a role here in international relation. And then Prof. Abu Sulayman, he saw that most existing theory in international relation come from secular or Western backgrounds. As mentioned, these theories often emphasize power, competition, and self-interest, focusing on how states pursue their national interests, sometimes at the expense of ethical consideration, which is really problematic in his view. So that's why, in contrast, he himself, Prof. Abu Hamid, Prof. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, sorry, Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, he believed that an Islamic approach to international relation would look really different from the Western perspective. For example, here in Islamic teaching, principles such as justice, compassion, and community are essential. The Islamic world will also emphasize the dignity of every human being and promote peaceful coexistence. This is really a key that he tried to convey. Like we living in the global stage era, we not just live only like Muslim country. We have to live peacefully with the non-Muslim country, non-Muslim culture, or anything like that. So how we can live with the peaceful coexistence? So he want to develop like a framework that could address this moral or ethical aspect while still being practical for use in the real world. Because sometimes it's really, if it's too optimistic, sometimes you cannot really use it in the real world. Because if you see all, not all, I mean, mm, majority of the major power or middle power around the world, most of them focus on the realist perspective, which is focus on the power, who held the greatest power, who held the biggest power, you will get everything. As US, they try to like conquer everything. They try to limit the power within themselves. They don't want to share the power to China or anything. So most of them use the realist theory. So as the name of it, realist, it's really real. It can be used in the real world, of course. So how the alternative view that really optimistic will be used in the world. So that's why he will come with the framework that even is really sometimes looking like is it optimistic, but it still can be used in the real world. So through this book, Prof provides a methodology that he hope Muslim scholar or diplomat can use to engage with global issue in a way that remain true to Islamic value. So he envisioned a framework where concepts like justice and peace are not just secondary consideration, but are the center of how nations interact. This work is not only a theoretical exercise, it is meant to be a practical guide for how Muslims can navigate international relations without compromising their faith and value. Because if you see today's world, sometimes the thing that they really consider the most when they have the interaction among the country is not justice, it's not peace, but it is just a material gain, what they can gain, what benefit they can get from this interaction? If no, of course, why they have to like still remain to have relationship with this country or have the good relationship, have a good interaction with this country. So he he tried to introduce justice and peace as the first, as the primary consideration in international relation, not just a secondary consideration. Okay. So for the next, now that we know a bit about him and then we know a bit about the objective of this book, so I'm going to just introduce some context and relevance for, I mean, this book, how this book can be fit in this contemporary era nowadays, because as brother Jazwa mentioned, this book actually is like uh it was published like 20 years ago maybe. But in today's world, international relation field is really developed so far from that days. So we come to see that even the field is already developed until it's really far from the day that the book was published 20 years or 30 years ago, but it's still relevant, and then we can still use the contents in that book to solve some issue and problem in today's world. The global landscape we see today is highly interconnected, as we know, and then the action of the one part of the world can have a far-reaching impacts, of course. So many current theories in international relations focus primarily on power dynamics, as I mentioned, competition, and then also self-interest. While this perspective can explain certain behavior of some state, can explain why China did that, can explain why US choose to do that, can explain why France, UK, or any other country try to be silent in some perspective. We can explain, but these theories often lack of focus on ethic and moral responsibility. They only focus on the power, focus on the benefit of the country, which this is really against Islamic value. So him, Prof. Abu Sulayman, he saw an opportunity to challenge these conventional views with Islamic perspective. So in his view, here, Islamic theory of international relation would focus on guiding Muslim countries to interact each others, and not just only Muslim countries, but with non-Muslim countries also, in a way that try to promote justice, peace, and also mutual respect among the nations. So the theory that he bring about is not just solely focused on the not just solely focused on the power, but he tried to maintain the relationship together. We can still maintain the Islamic value. So this is really important in his view, because now why there are many chaotic or many crises in today's world is because they try to divert themselves out of Islamic value. So why this matter for now, for this era? Because Prof believe that Muslim communities and countries have a responsibility to promote peace. Okay, not just like da'wah, but we also have to promote peace and ethical behavior on the global stage. So this book encourage Muslim to actively engage in global issue while staying true to their values. Not just like you want to engage in the global issue, but you tend to like leave some part of Islamic value, leave some part of the Islamic ethical principle, and then you just take the material gain, something like that, which is what he not really, I would say, against. He really against that way, because he mentioned many times in this book that he really against this kind of view that focus only solely material gains, and then you reject all the value that Islam can give. So his theory offer an alternative model where nations can work together toward a common good while respecting one another's cultural and religious identity. So that's all for the introduction of the book. And then now, before we jump into the
Fathee,
bit,
just want to
yeah.
ask, the slide is not moving. Is there any slide?
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thi-
Oh, okay, okay, now it's moving.
Okay, okay. Sorry, because I just focused to talk. Okay, sorry. And then now before I jump into the content of the book, I would introduce some introduction of international relation. What does it mean by international relation? So international relation can be defined as the study of how nations, not just nations, organization, and many entities, even governmental actors or non-governmental actors, they are interact at a global stage, covering diplomacy, security, trade, human rights, and many more. This is the main key point of IR. We study how each country interact among each other. So the importance of the IR is that to understanding global peace, cooperation, or anything that we want to promote, we have to understand the mechanism behind it. What nation use to manage this interaction? They want to promote peace. How did they do it? They want to uh, start the war. Why they do that? We study all about this thing. If we understand it, we can manage the conflict that going to happen in the future. So the development of the international relation actually is happened after World War II, especially Cold War, when the all the nations try to accept and then adapt to the globalization trends. So it's make like even you are really far away from each other in terms of a geopolitical position, but actually you still have the interaction among each other by trade, by diplomacy, or by anything. So when it's come to this, many prominent scholar, I mean, when I say prominent scholar, here is mean a Western scholar, they come up with two or three main theories, and then nowadays they break into many theories, but I will just mention these three. The first one is realism. Realism is the theories that grounded in the thinker, like human is in the nature, human really not really a good beings. They always pursue the power. They believe in this kind of concept. So that's why they uh, they they focus solely the story that okay, every actions that human did or the nations did, they do it in the sake of the power, in the sake of the self-interest, or in the sake of to gaining more power, to gain more interest. It's just repeat this thing to get power, and the power bring them to the interest. That's the first, and then it's really mainstream one for nowadays. They try to explain many things, many international relations by this view. For the second theory is liberalism. So liberalism rooted in the Enlightenment ideas, which argue that the cooperation and peace are achievable through international relation by democracy or by trade, by organization. And then the third one and the last one from the main international relation theory, which is constructivism. Constructivism focus on the role of the principle of the value. How can this value, this idea can shape international relation? Like someone or like example, US have said last how many years ago during the Iraq war, they said that they bring troops to Iraq not for war, not for self-interest, but they want to promote the democratic value. They say that. But if you believe so, it's okay. But if not, of course, there's some problem here from disabled. They say that they bring troop to promote democratic value by like control others countries, like something like that. So there's the view, another view that we can we can see from the Western scholar. All right. So after that, after we know this problem, this kind of problematic rationale behind the mainstream theories, so it's come to the reason, I mean, the motive why Prof really want Islamic framework in international relations. Prof Abu Sulayman, he really want Islamic framework in this. So First, as started, I mentioned, he critiques Western dominated theories. He argued that this theory inadequately addressed the ethical dimension of global relations, focusing instead on national interests, power, and material gain. So he points out that this focus produced a distorted and incomplete understanding of international dynamic, particularly for society with value that divert from Western materialism. So here he identifies several key issues, like firstly, Western international relation theory like realism are rooted in materialism and the pursuit of power. So the weaving in international relations is like a zero-sum game. If you gain, others will not gain. It's become like that. It will not be a peaceful coexistence. If I got, you will not got it. If you got that, I will not got that. It become a zero-sum game, where the states compete for resource. So this perspective foster a worldview that prioritizes survival and dominance over ethical considerations, often justifying aggressive actions. And then for the liberalism, offer a more optimistic view of cooperation. But it still remain anchored in the self-interest, failing to address ethical responsibility toward non-democratic nations. Because for liberals theories, they try to explain that this country have this crisis because they not really adopt the democratic value. That's the problem from the liberalism views. So furthermore, Abu Sulayman highlights the historical roots and colonial legacy of these theories, which evolved during period of imperialism. So this legacy embeds a worldview that justify intervention and exploitation under the guide of national interest or global stability or whatsoever that they come up. So Islamic nation often the targets of such inventation, exploitation, anything, oil or many more. So this require an alternative framework that respect their sovereignty and dignity. So Prof also emphasized here that ethical gaps or moral accountability lagging in Western frameworks, which allow powerful state or major power to act unethically while imposing sanction or exploitative agreement on weaker nations, as we can see for nowadays, especially for the matter of Palestinian and Israel conflicts, is based on this. Like the the theory is really lack of moral accountability. You can do whatsoever if you can pursue the power or pursue the self-interest of your nations. So he bring about the Islamic framework to prioritize moral principle first, justice, mercy, respect, to ensuring that the nation are held accountable for their actions, not just do whatever they want. And with this theory try to promote cooperation over unchecked self-interest. So ultimately, Prof invention in Islamic international relation framework as a universal system offer a more ethical foundation for global interaction, encouraging nations to base their decision on moral duties toward humanity. This would create an order where power is balanced with responsibility, justice is prioritized, and then also self-interest aligned with the collective good, not just you can gain and then become zero-sum game. So for the next thing is that in the books he discussed a lot about this. He want to reinterpret CR. Like traditionally, CR are considered as a law itself, but he tried to reinterpret CR as a source of law, not just a law. It means that CR is just a guideline. You can just follow this, but you're not really strict to adopt this and then practice this. This is his will. So this debate, uh, Prof argued that CR should only be seen as a sort of law, not a law itself. He disagreed with other scholars like Dr. Muhammad Hamidullah and Majid Qaduri. These two scholars that treat Siyar as actual law, one by one, like literally they get from this and then they place, not just a guideline like what Prof. Abdul Hamid Abu Sulayman trying to convey. Because traditionally Muslim legal expert in most of the mazhab, I think many mazhab have always treated Siyar as a law, and Muslims have followed this rule for centuries. This expert took this rule directly from the Quran and Sunnah, which made them binding on Muslims. But Prof think differently. He believed that modern Muslims are not required to follow these traditional rules. Instead, he thinks they should create new law that fit today's need, using the old rule only as a guidance, as I mentioned. So Prof trying to his view would change how Muslims approach Islamic law in a big way. He thinks on Islamic law should be seen as a just source of guidance, not a strict rules. He also believes Muslims don't need to follow specific school of Islamic law, which is quite different from the traditional approach. But, however, many scholars disagree with him. They said his approach could cause problems because different schools of Islamic law have their own ways of interpreting rules. If you mix and match the rule without understanding their background, it could lead to confusion and inconsistency. So the story shows Islamic law was actually used as a real law in Muslim empire. For example, when Abu Yusuf was Chief Justice, his legal book Kitab al-Kharaj was used as actual law by Caliph Harun al-Rashid. This shows that historically Islamic law was treated as a real law, not just a source of guidance. So this debate go on and on in this book, but he end that if Muslim country want to survive in today's contemporary international relation era, you have to see Siyar as a source of law, not just a law itself. With this view, Muslim country can have a really flexible law, not just strictly follow the traditional method. So for the methodology, he talked about the Islamization of knowledge in international relation. So he start from defining the definition. He start to defining what Islamizations mean. So the Islamization of knowledge here evoke around rethinking and restructuring field of international relation, mostly try to focus on Islamic ethical perspective. This is an effort to bring Islamic value to the forefront of scholarly and practical discourse, creating a framework where divine guidance, ethical accountability, and human welfare are foundational. Not national self-interest is the primary consideration. But it's still this this will challenge the secular framework because traditional international relation theories, as mentioned, are grounded in secular concepts that often prioritize power, self-interest, and material gain. Prof argued that this framework failed to incorporate the spiritual and ethical dimension, specifically to Islamic teaching, which emphasize justice, compassion, and collective well-being. By Islamizing international relation, he showed that a shift toward a model where moral principles guide state behavior would lead the world to more peaceful coexistence. This is his argument, and then he repeated many times in this book. And then until the end of the chapter, he still repeat this argument. Means that in his view, in his view, power is the second consideration. What you have to establish the most is peace and justice. But what is the goal of Islamized international relation? The first one is to promote ethical global governance, because he believed that if you cannot promote the ethical governance, how can you will achieve the peace? Because peace will come with the justice and ethical behavior, not just by the power itself alone. And then also, he believed in the he believed in the encouraging Muslim scholar and nation to contribute in this international relation. He he conveyed the message to them, like drawing. Uh, I mean, he encouraged Muslim scholar and state to actively participate in shaping global policies, not just follow the major global power from USA or China. So he drawing Islamic principle as a valuable contribution to international relation. He envisioned a world where Islamic nations lead by example, promoting policy that reflect Islamic ethic in diplomacy, economic cooperations, and then together with the conflict resolution. So for the methodology, first he start by reassessing international relation theories through Islamic lens. So he analyzed Western international relations. He identified the area where Islamic value can provide alternative. As mentioned, constructivist theory focus on the value and principle, which is this one really. I would not say that is it the same thing, but it's have the similar components in that theory. So he tried to come up to develop the normative framework. He advocated for building a normative framework that integrate core Islamic teaching, such as shura for consultation, ihsan for excellence and benevolence. He tried to promote this Islamic teaching into practical policies. This include guidelines for diplomatic behavior, equitable trade, and peaceful conflict resolution based. So in the practice, Pro framework extend beyond theory and has practical implication in policy areas where ethical consideration are critical. By integrating Islamic value into key aspect of international policy, he, Prof. Abu Sulayman, envisions a more human and responsible approach to global challenge, like, for example, environmental diplomacy. Because in Islam, humans are considered as a Khalifa of the earth. So, Khalifa of the earth responsible for maintaining and protecting the environment. An Islamization of international relation approach would prioritize sustainability, responsible resource management, emphasizing policies that balance human needs with ecological preservations. That's the first thing. And then for the next example is that in the international stage, we really focus on international cooperation, especially for today's world. We focus on the topic like sustainability. So with the Islamic principle, we encourage collaboration and discourage wastefulness, advocating for equitable sharing of resource. Like, you not just hold the resource alone, but you share the resource among all the stage. With this, in environmental diplomacy, an Islamic approach would encourage states to collaborate on sustainable practice and climate justice, ensuring that vulnerable nations are not dispro- dispro- dis- okay, sorry, disproportionately affected by environmental degradation caused by the industrialization of the major power. And then many more examples that he give here, and then he provide the example of humanitarian aid and refugee policy, global health and ethical resource distributions. Also here, economic policy and trade relations. But all in all, Prof view of Islamization of knowledge in international relation is a really ambitious vision that seeks to reorient the international relation around the ethical and human principle derived from Islamic teaching, not just solely focus on material gains or self-interest. So by incorporating this value, he proposes a model of global governance that emphasizes justice, compassion, and respect for human dignity. This framework offers practical applications in areas like environmental diplomacy, humanitarian aid, global health, and conflict resolution. This framework providing a path toward a world where moral accountability is central to statecraft. So through this principle, Prof believe that nations can work together to create a fairer and more balanced and more ethical international system that serve the well-being of all humanity, not just focus solely on the nation that hold the most power. So this is all what he trying to convey in this book. He focused, recap it again. He focused on the failure of the mainstream Western theories, and then he come up with the alternative because he said that the mainstream theories mostly focus on the material gains, focus on self-interest, focus more on power. So he want to come up with another alternative framework which focus on Islamic value and Islamic teaching. So later on, when the countries adopt this framework, we could establish the global governance that create a fairer and more balanced and more ethical international system in today's world. And then that's all for his book. And then I will open for the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very
If
much.
there is a question, but if there is no, it's okay.
There is a question. I think that I open first in the room. With you, I think before there is Arisa and Muhammad. I think before has joined invitation in the room. I also, if you have question in YouTube and Facebook, if you also write and you can ask. Just a recap, as you said about the three Western theories, the rationalist, the constructivism, and liberal. Liberal,
Liberal, yes.
liberal. I think it was being, we can say, major Western theory of legislation. And I do have, we can say, currently read the book by John Mashmeyer, How States Think, which is he is considered as a major scholar in rationalist theory. And he has been, you can say, very vocal on this particular time because he said uh, uh, rationally uh, states like Israel and US should not behave the way they behave now, but they behave irrationally compared to, let's say, he compared to Russia in Ukraine. He said that Russia is behaving rationally in trying to, let's say, prevent NATO expansion in Russia. That's why they invade Ukraine. It doesn't matter if you really agree or not, but that's how he used his theory to explain the current issues of the world. Do you think because the Abdul Hamid Sulayman proposed another theory, which is ethical theory, do you have any understanding of how Muslim countries react on the issue of Palestine? Because in Malaysia we have, I think, there is a difference between the leaders and the people. You know, the leaders sometimes they condemn, but they don't do anything. But people meanwhile is protesting, pushing the government to do something on this issue. Do you have any any comment on that?
I would say as mentioned, like for now, most of the country, even like you have the priorities in terms of the some value, like in Malaysia we have the Islamic value in terms of this conflict between Palestine and Israel. We try to don't have the relationship with Israel, but still many times they still consider about the national interest. We can't escape from this because if you cannot maintain the national interest, if you can live the value that you hold up, but if you cannot maintain the national interest, your supporter will, how should I use the word? Like they will hate you because what they want you to manage this country, not the conflict in the global stage. And then also this happened also in Thailand and then in many countries that I have viewed, even that they have their uh, priorities in some principle, in some value, but they will leave that as the second consideration if that will affect their national interest. Yes.
I think it's interesting you said that a lot of people in the country said that what is the point of for example, even in Malaysia, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim meet a lot of people outside of the country. He goes to Russia, he goes to UAE and Kazakhstan, and a lot of places. But people complain, what is the point of trying to go to the other outside countries? Why not focus on the current issue, Malaysia? But the explanation is the reason why he goes to a lot of countries is because to create network so that all of these countries come and invest in Malaysia, and it will bring the economy, bring the investment, and the economy will be good for Malaysia. That's the point of uh, some leaders. That's how they approach the international relations to bring about the economy, and also to bring also because Barib also is known as the international leader, and he did go to when he go to UAE, to Arab Saudi, to a lot of places. He talk about this thing about Palestine. He never forget about touching the issue of Palestine because he knows that Malaysia as a small country cannot do anything per se, but he as a voice he is being respected. Even a lot of Muslims around the world respected him in that kind of issues. There's a question in Facebook from Sister Balkis. Uh, do you think democracy system is the best practice to promote peace and justice, especially in Malaysia? Oh, democracy. So this is a question about democracy.
The she again. Can you repeat the
Do
questions
you
again?
think democracy system is the best practice to promote peace and justice, especially in Malaysia?
If the best, I would say, of course, no. But if like the most practical one in today's world, I have to say yes. In like, if best, of course, no. But if the most practical one in today's world, yes. Because many of the, how should I say, like many ideologies still like have the problem in terms of their practice, especially when you have a really good ideology, especially with the democratic value. But in terms of practice, you got the not really so good governance. That's a really problem because it's become the problem of the people, not problem of the system. If the system is safe, it will not really be problematic. Mm. So, and then when I say about Malaysia, I also cannot say a lot because I'm from Thailand. That's why I'm really afraid to say to say many things.
Yeah, I agree because sometimes, but sometimes a lot of people in Malaysia itself like to listen about the opinion of other people outside of Malaysia about how foreigners perceive us, especially the seeing from outside. Probably it's easier to really, we can say, analyze the problem in certain country if you are from outside. That's one approach. Another I also wanted to ask you now on, because you Abdul Hamid Sulayman talk about the history. You know how Islamic empires, Islamic kingdom in the past. The how they create relations. Uh, how what is the because in the past, the history is that the way that the country, because it's not country but the empires, the kingdom, they are fighting each other. They the way that the relation is usually either through war, or through
Trade.
conflict, or through basically through exchange goods exchange
Uh,
relations, barter trade, stuff like that. It's not the way that we are doing now. What do you think? Uh, we know we don't want to go back to that era, but sometimes we know that war is constantly between two country, even though the supposedly United Nations is supposed to prevent any war, we know that currently we have a war between Israel and Lebanon and Israel and Iraq. This kind of this kind of thing, maybe in the future, if you want to try to make a future studies, maybe the future of the world, maybe go back to that kind of era.
yes,
Relations between country will become about who will be conquering who.
yes. I agree on that. Like, also, when we refer to the hadith that says at the end of, I mean, like the near Qiyamah day, the last war will be like they will just use the horse and use like traditional weapon like that. So it's mean like at the some point all of these civilizations things will return back to the traditional ways, also in terms of the interaction between state, because this kind of is international system is just happens only like how many years pass after they create the state nations. They try to scope the country under this limit, this geographical position only, but later on we don't know, because now they also try to break the globalization or many things. It will bring back to the bad old day or good old day. I also cannot say that, but my um my perspective is maybe same like you. In the next future we will return back to the same approach.
Yeah, I agree. Before previously we know do not we know only believe in the but at least we know that the Quranic very verses the Hadith sometimes it's very literal. Sometimes we try to do tafsir, try to do it what is behind that. But sometimes what God said and what Prophet said is very literal sometimes. I think because there is no is there question from chat? Yeah, there's question from chat.
From chat.
Will you write it?
Question from chat. Okay, could you?
Can you see it?
Yes, I
Okay,
see.
okay.
Because I'm outside, so if I turn on the mic, maybe it's pregnancy, so I put on the chat thing.
Okay. Pati will read it from the chat.
Okay. So could you elaborate on how an Abu Sulayman's theory of international relations can contribute to the resolution of global issues like climate change and poverty, which often transcend traditional geopolitical boundaries? Uh, for this, I think, as the mentioned, his framework advocate on the moral duties toward humanity. Like he forgot on this first as the primary consideration, not the self-interest of nation or the power. So with this means that rather than solely on national interest, this approach, I mean his approach, could foster a global commitment to climate action, to poverty, to anything together. Because the main consideration we shift from the self-interest of nations toward the record this, toward the duty to humanity, toward humanities. You get what I mean? Like from focus on like try to limit it everything under your country, but you try to bring a goodness to the whole humanity. So it's mean like the the problem that you mentioned here, like often transcendent traditional geographical boundaries. Yes. So we not just only solve under your country, but you will try to aim for all humanity.
I think I have a follow-up question from that question from Inju because I think you can probably answer it from your own from all your personal view. Uh, because some people said that we should have khilafah. People like Hizbut Tahrir, people like that. Do you agree with that statement? Because they said that if we have khilafah, we can solve all these things, all these global issues.
If you have I would think even one country, like imagine even one country, there's still even like US, if we want to put them as a number one in terms of civilization, even them as the one country, they still cannot solve everything under their governance. So it's mean like even Khilafah, it sound really good, but when it's come to practice, I think they also still cannot solve everything under their governance. Yes.
I think it's okay. Thank you very much, Fathee, for your presentation. And I think we thank you for all the questions from the Facebook, from Zoom, from YouTube. And inshallah, I think we hope that you all can read the book, and we can continue this discussion. Obviously, Prof. Abdul write this book as a introduction, and we can continue his ideas, especially for the young scholars. Do you have any final thought, Fatih? Final remarks?
Uh, for final part, I would say like this is really what I think that we have to promote when we view international relations nowadays, because now we solely focus on the self gain, which is really make your focus like, oh, I'm from Malaysian, you from Thailand, so no, we have the boundary line to divide us. That's the thing that I feel really, what do you call this, really sad for, especially for Muslim. If it happen for the non-Muslim, it can still understandable. But for Muslim, you divide the people through the state nations. But actually, you just Muslim, one ummah, something like that. That is the thing that I want to convey this message and then try to break that line, that limit down. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Fatih, for your good discussion today. And with that, I invite you all to like our video, share our video, and subscribe to all our ILMI platform, media social platform, and YouTube and Facebook. And we can meet again in the next session for a lot of more discussion on books, intellectual books. With that, I close with Tasbih Kafrul Surah.
Subhanakallah.